Planting vegetables. Many of our vegetable crops are direct seeded into the garden. So in that case, you take the seed, you plant it about as deep as the seed is wide. Sometimes people will cover their vegetable seed with a different they'll use an artificial soil mix, or they'll use sand or vermiculite, so that it gives a little bit of an easier soil for the seedling to grow through, but also so they know where they where they planted it. So you can do that, or you can just use your garden soil to cover the seeds. The seed packet is your source of information for all of the spacing requirements for that particular plant. You can also consult some of the square foot gardening charts and other intensive gardening um, resources. You can consult other intensive gardening resources to determine if this particular plant can be, planted a little bit more closely than is listed on the seed packet as well. It's very important to keep the seed moist until the plants germinate. Once that germination process begins, you really cannot allow the seed to dry out, because it's a surefire way to kill your seeds without giving them a fair shot at growing. So the seed must be kept moist until the plants start to germinate. The lettuce seed, anything in the lettuce, that Asteraceae family, requires some light to germinate. So many times people will sow the seed directly on top of the ground. If you feel like you must cover it with something, you can do a very, very light covering with something like vermiculite or perlite that will still let some light through, but give a little bit of coverage to the developing seedling. A lot of our vegetables are fairly long season and really should be started indoors. This includes those plants in the Solanaceae family: tomato, eggplant, and pepper. They require a very long season. And as I mentioned before, when you look at the days to harvest for tomato, for example, and it says that it will be ready to harvest in 60 days, that actually means from the time you put it into the garden as a plant, not the time from seed to the first tomato that's ready to harvest. So tomatoes, days to harvest are from plant to first harvest. So keep that in mind when you're planning which cultivar you're going to be putting in your garden. You can start these indoors. And for tomatoes, usually 4 to 6 weeks before you're ready to move them outside. You can hold tomato, eggplant, and pepper plants, 10 to 12 weeks after seeding. You can still have them indoors as long as you have enough light and the proper conditions to keep them healthy. Some things, like onions and leeks, can be put out as transplants. They can be direct seeded into the garden, or they can be put out as sets, which are like tiny little bulbs that go into the garden. But tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants are almost always transplanted into the garden, as are many of the brassica crops. Anytime you are putting transplants from a protected environment into the exterior, it's important to make sure that they are hardened off and acclimated to the outdoors. If you were to take a greenhouse grown tomato plant and take it directly from the greenhouse and put it outside without any kind of protection at all, you would soon find that the leaves were scorched and turning white. You may see some really excessive wilting, and in extreme cases, the plants may die. So to harden the plants off, there are a couple of things that you can do very easily indoors, and then a process for moving them outside gradually that will help them to adjust to the world outdoors. One of the things is that you can use wind. You can put a fan on them. You can brush them with your hand on a regular basis to move the plants around, which um, helps stiffen up the stems. It actually changes the protein levels in the stems and causes some physical changes to the cellular structure to make the stems stiffer, which is great when you're going to put them outside so that they can withstand the wind outside. You can alternate temperatures between day and night so that they have a good difference of temperature that they have to adjust to. You can lower the temperature so that they get acclimated to a different temperature range. If you're growing your tomatoes and they stay at 65 to 70 degrees all the time and you put them outside and all of a sudden you have a 45-degree night and an 80-degree day, they're not going to handle that very well. So the more you can expose them to before they go outdoors, the better off they will be. You can also drought stress them a little bit. Stop fertilizing them before you transplant them outdoors, and then you can gradually introduce them to the outdoors by putting them in the shade in a protected location for a little while, bring them back inside, and then each day expose them to a little bit more. Usually it takes 5 to 10 days to acclimate plants to the outdoors, so it doesn't take that long to do it. But if you don't do it, the plants will suffer. Transplanting on cloudy days helps minimize a lot of the problems that we typically see with transplants, from sun scald to excessive wilting. Watering, of course, is very essential for any transplanted plant into the garden, so make sure that they're watered really well. And try to plant at the same depth as the transplants were in the pot. And the exception for that, of course, is tomatoes. Tomatoes are strange little plants that can make roots all up and down their stems. So as deep as you can plant the tomatoes, or if they are flexible enough that you can plant them on their side and turn the leaves up, as long as you have the top growth and at least one or two little sets of leaves above the soil, those tomato plants will be perfectly happy and will develop roots all up and down the stem, giving you a much bigger and healthier root system. A lot of things that are seeded into the garden will need to be thinned. And that may seem wasteful to you, and it may be really hard for you to do this. It seems like plant brutality, but you need to do it or you won't get what you want out of the garden. Some good examples of this are the root crops. If you're trying to grow radishes, carrots, beets, and the plants do not get thinned, you will not get radishes, carrots, and beets. You will get lots of lush top growth, but you won't get the root formation. Or if you do, you may end up with a lovely malformed root that is still edible, but not very pretty. So, and it's very easy to overplant when the seeds are so small and you're planting by hand and not using a seeder of some sort. It's very easy to overplant. If you are planting any of the brassicas, whether it's turnips or radishes or anything else in that family, you can pluck those seedlings right out of the soil and wash them off and eat them because they're quite lovely. So that may make you feel better about thinning them. But make sure that you do thin the plants to the appropriate spacing so that the plants develop the way they're supposed to.